Hi guys, welcome to episode 2 of the second series of Pusong Pinoy with Malcolm Conlan. I'd like to start off by thanking all of my guests so far. I'd also like to thank Buy and Remit for your continuous support and sponsorship of this project. I know through this we can help many Filipinos in the UK and, of course, support the community. This is an advocacy for me to be able to support good causes, to be able to support the community, as well as pass on or share important information is something that I'm very pleased to be able to do. On that note, I'd like to introduce my next guest. It's an issue that's very close to my heart, the issue of undocumented Filipinos or TNTs in the UK. And for a long time now, probably about 15, 20 years, I've kind of been aware of this. And, it's something that is a big problem in the UK, for these Filipinos who find difficult circumstances. I'd like to introduce Susan from Kanlugan. She's the trustee of Kanlugan. And, it's a real pleasure and an honor to be able to have her on the show. Hi. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, Susan Cueva? Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what's your involvement?
Good afternoon, Malcolm. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm the trustee of Kanlugan. Of course, I grew up in the Philippines. I came to the UK to work here as a migrant worker. But whilst in the Philippines, I've been working with the trade unions. When I came to the UK, I also worked in the voluntary sector for supporting migrants and refugee communities in the UK. And now I'm still working with the trade union. So that's my kind of general work in life, really.
What made you want to become involved in this advocacy and what started Kanlugan? Can you give us a little bit of background, please?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, when I came to the UK, I have always been working with community organizations supporting many migrant Filipinos and refugee people in the UK. And during the time when I arrived, I started working in and supporting the campaign for undocumented domestic workers who've been coming to the UK brought by their employers, and they have to leave the employer, so they become undocumented. But when we set up Kanlungan, it was really a kind of organization which initially was a self-help organization supporting many people who have had problems with their employment issues, with their immigration issues, with their visas, and of course some issues around welfare and family issues that many migrants normally will experience anyway in their life coming to a country which is new to them and subject to a lot of restrictions in terms of how they can work and they can live in the UK. So that's why we
Mm-hmm.
set up Kanlungan.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell me how many undocumented Filipinos do you think there might be in the UK or TNT Filipinos do you think there might be? I know in other parts of Europe, but just in the UK, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, as you know, many Filipinos will come to the UK with visa, and they will all come legitimately to the UK. They didn't come out here set with a view that they will be undocumented. So the many of them come as domestic workers, as I said, who have lost their visa because of the abuse that they have experienced from their employer. Many of them, of course, come as nurses, and they come and work in the NHS, and those others also come as carers. Others are family members, family reunion, joining families. But in the process of their coming over to the UK, many changes in the immigration law happens. You know, the different government in the UK will change the immigration law in the country, and in the process, some requirements which should be allowing the extension of their visa has become very difficult for them to satisfy. So, as you know, over the years, changes in family reunion salary needs to be met. With nurses, they need to pass their OSCE test. With carers, they need to meet a salary level, and so on and so forth. So they're changing all those things all the time. So we will have undocumented in all those aspects of our community. We'll have undocumented who were domestic workers, we'll have undocumented carers, even nurses. We have some undocumented nurses, and also family reunion where the family relationship broke or fell apart. So over a period of the last, how many, 20, 25 years of changes in immigration law, we've accumulated many of these people. Some of them have been here for 10, 15 years, some even maybe reaching 20 years. So how many they are, I mean, it's very difficult to really know the numbers. Even the government in the UK don't have and don't know how many people are undocumented in the UK as a whole. They're talking about 500,000. They're talking about 1,000,000. I think in our community, we're talking about thousands and thousands of Filipinos who are undocumented, and that was really shown by the effect of the COVID that had happened in the last few months that we have experienced. So yeah,
And
I
of
mean,
course,
we're talking about thousands of Filipinos undocumented here.
And of course, the thing is, there may be people within our community who maybe we even know within the Filipino community. And of course, we don't have any clue that they're undocumented. Even their fellow Filipinos won't have any clue. I've heard of some very sad cases where some have actually been reported by their fellow Filipinos. There was this time, when Jollibee opened in the UK, there was this rumor that was completely untrue that immigration were going down the line and seeing who was undocumented in Jollibee.
Yeah.
There was also a situation before at the one of the Barrio Fiestas where there was some rumor that the immigration were going there and they were going to pick somebody up. And it turned out in this case, it was just an individual Filipino who reported another one. How big of a problem is that? Because it must be very, very hard, stressful, and depressing for Filipinos who find themselves in those circumstances.
I mean, I think there's always this kind of situations in the communities around undocumented, because it's human relationship. Really, you can't help that there is some conflict or some tension in the community. However, from my experience, I know that many of the people that I work with have been supporting each other in terms of how they can work together and how they can each of them find a way into which they can regularize. I mean, of course, there are some incidences of people reporting each other, but that's kind of human nature, really. People will tend to not like each other for various reasons, for different reasons. But in general, I think that's just a small number of people in our community. In general, many of our community Filipino migrants support our undocumented because they know, and there's always been a kind of thing that some of them knows or are related to some undocumented people. Some families will have undocumented family members. Some people have friends who are undocumented, and we all work together. We mingle each other, and we don't really kind of discriminate around undocumented. We hardly ever even ask those questions. Of course, until you reach a point when something happens to them, and then we need to support them in relation to their being undocumented, because either they get reported or they get by chance been checked by the immigration officers in their workplaces or in their homes, and in different ways that they have been checked. So those are the things that's happening, and I think generally many of our community members support each other and will support our undocumented people.
The thing is, it's become worse and worse for an undocumented Filipino in the UK, hasn't it? In terms of costs, in terms of fees for regularizing stays. Sadly, there's lots of Filipinos in these circumstances also getting ripped off. It's a very worrying time. And also, there's this issue if you house an undocumented person, there's some kind of fine. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Has that actually been put into action? Has anyone actually been sort of prosecuted for that? So, where do undocumented Filipinos live?
Yeah. So, and that's the kind of issue that we have always been campaigning against, which is a whole kind of hostile environment against migrants, not only undocumented, but also the regular and the documented migrants. The government has really pushed quite a lot of pressure into the community of migrants in the country. So we know that they have banned people from being able to rent. Of course, they ban people from working, and they find employer who will be caught employing undocumented. Of course, when you get working as undocumented, of course, either they remove you from the country or they institute what they call the deportation proceedings against you. But all these things have really been part and parcel of our life, even as documented migrants. We go through that kind of process also of regularizing ourselves through extension of visas at different circumstances in our life. And through that process, even nurses, when I work in a trade union where I supported many Filipino nurses who started losing their visa because of the process of extension does not really fit within the kind of situations that they were in. Either the employer didn't know what to do, the employer made a mistake, or there's some kind of technical issues, like they couldn't regularize themselves. So they become undocumented over a period of time. And that's really difficult for many of our people in the community. And it costs a lot of money because even sometimes it's the home office that makes a mistake in their processing of their or visa or their papers, or the home office will lose their papers and documentation. And then they become undocumented because of that. And it costs them a lot of money. It's our workers and migrants who are being penalized for doing some of the for suffering the mistakes of the people who are not supposed to be making mistake on these things, whether it's employers, whether it's the home office, whether it's the solicitors dealing with their cases. They get punished for those mistakes that they sometimes didn't do themselves. So even, as I said, many of our regular workers going through that kind of undocumented, and some people couldn't regularize themselves because of the tremendous cost of money that you have to pay. You have to pay the immigration fees. Now you have to pay the immigration health surcharge, and then you have to pay your solicitor. So one go of trying to get your visa will cost probably £5,000 to £10,000. I know a family who are nurses, but they couldn't afford to regularize their children because the money costs a lot of money. So they say. So I said, so what's going to happen? When will you regularize your children? Oh, we have to save money in order to pay for their visa so that they can regularize. So they have to regularize themselves first. That's the money they can afford to do. And then they leave the children for a while who are become undocumented. So we have quite a lot of number of young people, children who are undocumented, as you know, Malcolm, because of different kind of reasons. So in a way, it's also very a big misfortune for people with family members sometimes, because they cannot afford the cost of all this kind of regularizing process, that their children and sometimes themselves become undocumented.
You know what really is frustrating, I find at the moment, particularly, is there's no doubt about this. Filipino nurses or Filipino healthcare workers have literally saved our lives. There's no doubt about that. During the time of the COVID-19 pandemic, the UK is reliant on its Filipino workforce. I believe there's maybe over 7,000 Filipino nurses within the UK. And many of them are on the front line, as you know, become hospital managers, clinical educators, intensive care specialists in every single field. And they are treating our UK nationals. They are treating UK Brits who become sick. And yet they have to pay this almost double taxation of this healthcare supplement, which I find is absolutely disgusting. How can you have a situation where you have a Filipino nurse looking after you in hospital and paying all her taxes, her national insurance, but on top of that, she needs to pay another surcharge? I'm confused, because I thought the national insurance was actually paying for our healthcare. Why would they be taxed twice? This is just something that I find is disgusting. And I also believe, unfortunately, there is also some racism. There's a lot of people in the UK who maybe say we don't want immigrants, we don't want foreigners. But I have to say, without these foreigners or immigrants, we would struggle. There are jobs that some Brits just don't want to do, and they would go undone. You only have to look at care homes all around the UK to know this, that how many Brits, how many white people do you see in care homes? It's in many times it's immigrants. It's really an important issue, and I know you're sort of campaigning over this as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So yeah, I mean, the immigration health surcharge were introduced by the government about 2 or 3 years ago now, as part of their kind of hostile environment policy against migrants or coming from non-EU countries, which will, incidentally, unfortunately, will also be imposed to EU workers now once we go into the Brexit situation. It's double taxation, basically, the immigration health surcharge, because the amount of money that we pay in tax is similar to any British national in the UK who are working. And then on top of that, we have to pay the immigration health surcharge. And these are mostly nurses and carers coming into the UK from the Philippines, who are, as you said, delivering the health services that they themselves cannot cannot take or cannot avail of if they didn't pay the immigration health surcharge. And they've increased it to 600 plus now, and that's
Yes.
per person. So if there are four of you in the family for one,
2,400.
that's a lot of money to pay, and therefore many of our people, our community, will not be able to pay a lot of those things, and therefore they take their chances. Sometimes they don't pay it, and then when something happened to them, then they get caught by it, and the whole problem will then emanate from that kind of fact that you weren't able to pay for it. We've been campaigning to remove that. We've campaigned even in the first instance before the government imposed that on people, not to impose that because of the difficulty it will create to many of the migrant workers. I mean, before that, they even also had the what they call the migration fees, which we managed to remove. Actually, they imposed migration fees earlier on before the immigration health surcharge. So that was stopped through the campaigning of many community organizations, and then the immigration health surcharge was imposed. I mean, during the COVID, as you know, this immigration health surcharge is being lifted by the government. But
Supposedly. There are promises, but we haven't actually seen it yet.
yeah, it's also only for 1 year. So can you imagine that? The succeeding years, they will still have to pay. And this is almost already 1 year into the whole COVID. I mean, we're going through the COVID period for almost 6 months now. So 1 year is nothing really in relation to how the government kind of looked upon migrant workers in terms of how they support them. I mean, there's so many things that happened during the COVID, as you know, which we have been trying to campaign so that the government really implement what they promised, even just for 1 year, that they promised to remove the immigration fees, the immigration health surcharge, the automatic kind of extension of their visa of the many migrant workers who work in the NHS and the care sectors, but it hasn't happened. So we're still pushing it. And as you know, we have put quite a lot of things in Parliament now in order to make sure that these things happen and it gets implemented by the government. And we're still waiting, as you know.
But isn't the government almost shooting itself in the foot in terms of the NHS, in terms of the British people? Because I believe the Filipinos make fantastic nurses, fantastic healthcare workers. They're very, very well trained. And what will happen, as we all know, is that they'll go to Canada, they'll go to America. A lot of Filipinos have actually left the UK and gone to other countries because of this healthcare surcharge. And this means that we will have many more unfilled vacancies. I do believe the government is really shooting themselves in the foot over this issue.
Yeah, I mean, over the last 5 years, the vacancy for nurses alone is about 30,000 per year in the UK, and they haven't managed to fill that gap. And even when the European nurses came to the UK, they also didn't manage to fill that gap in terms of recruiting nurses, because not many British people wanted to become nurses because they have to pay quite a lot of money to become nurses. As you know, it costs £9,000 per year to pay your fees, plus all the other costs of being a nurse. But then it didn't help that the salary of nurses is not very high. You enter as a nurse and you only earn £25,000 per year on your first entry. And for Filipino migrants who earn that money, and then you remove about 30% of that in terms of tax, they're having a kind of net income of about 1,500 per month. How do you pay rent and then send money back home with that amount
Rent,
of money?
council tax, sending money back home,
Exactly.
food, travel,
So
living
they're
allowance, it all adds
struggling.
up.
They're struggling. So many people are even working 40, 50, 60 hours in order to bump up their salary, because the pay is very low. And then you go to the care sector, and the care sector pays minimum wage. So you're looking at what, 18,000 pounds per year in terms of the care sector pay at minimum wage level. So how do you pay for everything that you need to pay and still send money back home in the Philippines? So the difficulty that the government has imposed into many migrant workers, despite the fact that they saved the countries from the devastation of COVID. They have saved many people's lives from devastation of COVID, but still the kind of very racist attack on migrants is still very high, especially now with COVID, because they look at us as Southeast Asian people. And there's a threefold increase in the attack or racial attack and hate crimes
Mm,
against Southeast Asian people. And they don't
mm,
discriminate between Filipinos, Chinese, Korean,
mm,
Japanese, whatever. We all look the same to them. So they will attack us racially as being the people who caused
mm.
the bringing of COVID to the UK. Well, in fact, we're the ones, and our communities are the ones who stopped COVID from devastating even further.
You know, I've been messaged about quite a few cases. There was one case of a Filipino nurse who just finished her shift and she was violently kicked outside the hospital and told she was Chinese. There's another case of a Filipino nurse who works as a neonatal nurse, a very, very experienced nurse, and she was on the tube and some people rushed past her and pushed her in the back and again said she was Chinese. You know, there's a lot of ignorance and there's a lot of racism. And you know, it's only when these people are lying in a hospital bed in intensive care with tubes in their mouth that maybe then they will recognize that racism is not acceptable. This is an issue that really, really concerns me. You know, we've lost how many? Maybe 50 Filipino healthcare workers as a result of COVID-19. And, you know, it's just something that I just can't get my head around. And also, there is racism towards these people as well, you know, even in terms of maybe, oh, you do the dirty jobs, you're Filipino. I'm not saying that definitely happens, and we haven't really found a reason why there is a higher occurrence of these difficulties or these deaths due to COVID-19 than there are of maybe other races. But there is an argument to say there is some racism. I'm not saying that's in all the cases, but you do wonder why Filipinos are more at risk. Maybe it's because they don't speak out, which is what's been considered. You know, they don't say something. If they haven't got the right PPE, just bahala ka, let's get on with it. And you know, they're sacrificing their lives, and yet there's still this racism, which I find utterly deplorable.
I think that there's a lot of cases of many of our nurses and care workers who've been victimized and have been victim of racial discrimination in the workplaces, even though they say no to some of their employers. And I know that some of them would say no. It's the insecurity of their situation in the UK. Many of them have temporary visas still as nurses or carers on a temporary visa because you don't get indefinitely to remain until about 5 years or 6 years afterwards. The
Hmm.
insecurity of their visa situation, the fact that they are new in the country and that they don't really know the procedure in terms of the things that needs to be to protect them, which is the employer's responsibility, is to protect the workers. We know that the employers didn't do the kind of procedure in which they should have done as a response to a pandemic like what happened in the UK and in other countries. And also, to a certain degree, many Filipinos are very caring workers. They do care a lot about the people that they looked after. And sometimes they sacrifice their own kind of safety to be able to look after the people that they looked after because they take their job very seriously and very sincerely that they want to support people. And that also, to a degree, has been the kind of reason why 25% of the death in the whole of the NHS employees are Filipinos, and 30% of the nurses who died are Filipinos. We do care quite a lot. But also, one of the reasons for that is that, as we know, the pay that they receive is not high. They're not very rich. We are not very rich community. We're in the low kind of at pay of the community in the UK. So the overcrowding in our accommodation, we have multiple occupancy. Sometimes family live in one room with two children, or sometimes families live in two rooms for, families of two with four children. So there's a lot of those kinds of issues and the poverty that we experience because of this inability to move upwards within our kind of workplace, because there's not hardly any place to move up for our migrant workers. So there's not enough kind of healthy way in which they can sustain themselves, because they work very hard, they work very long hours, and then they still have to send money back home. So we know that the inequality in the UK caused the death of many Filipinos and Black and ethnic minority communities here in the UK. That's already an established point from the report that the Public Health England has put out a few days ago, that the sheer inequality, the racism and the kind of racial prejudice and the kind of racial discrimination in many workplaces had really hit the community very badly. And this is one of the things that we wanted to really push to our community to understand, that they shouldn't allow that to happen again. Because if COVID happens again in the way that it happened in the last 3 months, then it's going to hit our community again badly. And we really want to inform and educate our community that they should speak out and that they should seek support if they need somebody to help them to be able to speak out, because of their fear of losing their visa, their fear of losing their jobs, their fear of being victimized by their employer or their manager in the workplace, because it will save their lives if they speak out, and they shouldn't allow themselves to be bullied, to be discriminated, because life is important. It's very important that they save their own lives so that they can save more people's lives in their workplace.
That's a really good point, and you've made some very important analogies of maybe what the real issues are. But I think the problem is people are scared to say that. Some people don't really want to come out and say what's actually happening. So I really commend you for the work that you're doing and for being that voice piece for Filipinos and Filipino rights in the UK. But not only that, the rights of all immigrants. It's not just about Filipinos. Obviously, this show is Pusong Pinoy, but I know other immigrant populations suffer these kind of abuses as well, and it's just absolutely awful. And I just think that we would have so many more deaths if it wasn't for the sacrifices and courageous hard work of our nurses. What I want to do now, if that's okay, is go ahead and just take a quick break. And when we've done that, we'll be right back. This is so interesting. There's so many interesting points, and I know we've got a number of comments and people asking different things as well. So let's join you soon.
Hi, we're Fourth Impact, and hello to all the viewers of Pusong Pinoy with Malcolm Conlan.
Thank you for always supporting Fourth Impact, and please, you can download our new song, No More.
And all digital platforms.
Yes, and you can follow us on all our social media accounts. Just type Fourth Impact, and everything is verified. So,
Thank you. God bless everyone. Keep safe.
Hi, my name's Jane Walker. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Purple Community Fund. We work with some of the poorest children and families in the Philippines. We run an integrated service plan from education, health, nutrition, social intervention, livelihood workshops, right the way through to business startups. And our goal is really to see as many Filipino families as we possibly can help to have a better and more sustainable and safe life. I have this great pleasure of welcoming you to Pusong Pinoy with Malcolm Conlan. And I've known Malcolm for a very long time, and he has been a massive supporter of the Purple Community Fund. In fact, Malcolm's been a massive supporter of pretty much everything Filipino. His drive, his passion, and his energy is just absolutely admirable. He is a voice for the Filipino community in Britain. He supports all up-and-coming bands and charities that are doing work in the Philippines, and I know you are going to really enjoy this show.
Thanks so much, guys, again for watching us. I know this is longer than we had planned, but this is a very interesting topic, and I know a lot of people want some kind of advice about their situation. So, Susan, if you wouldn't mind, I just wanted to ask you about what you think is the future for undocumented Filipinos in the UK. I receive many, many messages from Pinoys who ask about, will there be an amnesty, sir, or when there's going to be an amnesty. Can you just kind of briefly comment on how you think things are going to go?
Okay, so Kanlugan is working with many other organizations. In fact, we sent a letter to Boris Johnson in the beginning, at the end of March, about ensuring that undocumented people in the UK are protected because of COVID, and that the best way to protect these people is to regularize their immigration status now without any kind of hindrance or delay. We are now about 50, 60 organizations who are calling for this regularization of migrant workers, and we work with other communities across the UK doing this campaign to regularize. We have now put an early day motion in Parliament. I think yesterday it came out, the early day motion in Parliament, sponsored by Claudia Webb, one of the MPs, and 20 other MPs, calling for the regularization of undocumented people in the UK, refugees and asylum seekers and migrants as soon as possible. And we also know that Boris Johnson himself, when he was the mayor of London, said that he has no problem with regularization of undocumented people. So we hope that the government will look at this issue, because if the undocumented people are not regularized and the pandemic happens again, there is very, very little that the government can do in order to track and trace the undocumented people's infection, because they're not regularized, they're not in the system. They have to be in the system in order to be able to stop the spread of pandemic within the communities of undocumented people. So these are the kind of general call. And also, I think we believe that undocumented people's kind of ability to support the society in the UK is to allow them to work. Many of them are working as carers. You know, I know of a person who is undocumented looking after an elderly person who survived for so many years because of the care and affection that our undocumented migrant has given to this person. I know a person who's supporting somebody who's really extremely has difficulty in his kind of mental health and his physical movement, who's a young person, but being looked after by an undocumented worker, and has really given a lot of support to this person. And the family
Right.
and the parents of this person is really looking after the well-being of this undocumented, and wanted to regularize them. If they could regularize them, they tell our undocumented, I want to regularize you. How can we do that? And those are the kind of difficult things that the government needs to understand, that there are people, employers, who are willing to do that. Also, to a certain degree, I think that many of the families who were broken apart by the fact that they were undocumented, regularized, and they haven't seen their family members for so long a time, it is taking a toll on their mental health condition, that they haven't seen their loved ones for a very long time, but they need to send back home money, and they sacrifice their lives in order to be able to send back home money. And these people are so willing to pay all the taxes that needs to be paid in order that they can regularize, and then they can prosper even better and increase their skills and their ability to support the people that they're supporting, they're working with. So we're supporting many people to be able to understand that as undocumented, they also have rights as human beings, right? That they cannot and should not be allowing themselves to be exploited and abused by some unscrupulous employers, but also other people, lawyers who are trying to take as much money from them as they can. So we're trying to educate them what are the kind of rights as human beings, as people who are working in this country, as people who are engaged in work with other people, even in restaurants or hotels, they employ undocumented people, and therefore they have also rights, and their right is as a human being to be treated with dignity and respect. Now, there's a group of undocumented women with children, as you know, Malcolm, who you have supported one or two of them, we are supporting also because there are women with children who are going to be undocumented. And so we're going to look at the different ways in which we can support them towards the regularization process, because there are possibilities for them in this area. There's also a group of families with children who have been here in the UK for more than 10 years, who we could also go and understand their situations more deeply so that we can help them go through the process of regularization. But there's some other areas that there's possibility that people can be regularized, in addition to kind of national regularization campaign that we're doing for everybody. So we really want people to come forward to talk to us about their situations on a case-by-case basis, but we want to group them also as a kind of self-help group so that they can support each other, because it's not only us that can support them, they can also support each other, understand their kind of experiences, the way they would deal with their employers, the way they deal with work, the way they deal with the community, but also the way in which we can build the regularization process that we can go through with the support of really very good lawyers, immigration lawyers, who will not take advantage of them, but will really support in order to make sure that they go through regularization process.
You make a very good point about being taken advantage of. Last September, when I flew back home to the Philippines, it broke my heart. I flew with Philippine Airlines, and at the back of the plane, there was this man who was absolutely screaming and screeching during the before the takeoff, and he had to be held down by about 3 security officers. As well, there was a doctor there and a nurse, and there was a team who were with this guy. And it broke my heart, and people were just sort of kind of ignoring him. And then when the plane took off, I was walking towards the back of the plane, and he said, "Malcolm," and I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "I know you. I've been watching you on social media." He said, "You have to understand my plight. You have to understand my story. I've been in the UK for many, many years." He was in Brighton for more than 10 years, perhaps even longer than that, 20 years. And he was telling me he'd seen countless immigration lawyers, and he'd been promised so many times that he could stay in the UK if he submitted this amount of money and that amount of money. And this was to the point that when he was finally, I asked the security, I actually said, "Would you mind if I actually kind of speak to him?" And they said, sure. They were quite relaxed about it, shook my hand and said, "Look, we've also got to protect him. We're obviously we're obviously enforcing his removal from the UK, but also we're caring for his welfare," which is why they have a doctor and all these people. It wasn't very heavy-handed. And of course, when the plane actually took off, he then calmed down. I think obviously the strategy, which made sense, was to try and not go on the flight, but he basically put his hands in his head and just gave up once the flight had taken off. And I heard this terrible story about this immigration solicitor or immigration advisor in the UK. And even when this particular guy was in an immigration detention centre, I understand he was asked if he wanted to pay several £1,000s to sort out his papers. Even when he was in the immigration van, he was constantly called, "Oh, give me a bit more money and I'll try and help you." And the problem is there are so many ruthless people out there who are preying on countless Filipinos who are undocumented. How can you avoid this kind of situation happening? And what would you say that all these undocumented people should do? And what can you say about that case?
Yeah, I mean, these are kind of the usual way in which people get really cheated and take advantage of by these solicitors and agencies, and even some organizations posting to be supporting people undocumented. I really would like and encourage our kababayan Filipinos to contact us in Kanlugan so that we can be able to support you. If we cannot support you, we know of organizations that we work with who will be specialist organizations who will understand what you can do or what they can do in order to support you. So then there are people, for example, who have no recourse to public funds, like many of our nurses. And then some of the solicitors are saying to them, "Oh, we can lift your no recourse to public funds. You just pay us money." So, I mean, these things are kind of ways of really keeping people. I would really advise that either, they come to us as an organization, and we will respond to whatever we can do in order to support them. We are at the moment setting up a big program for supporting undocumented, but by as I said, by trying to get solicitors who will support groups of Filipinos in kind of similar situations, so that they can push the regularization process, and that's gonna cost a little bit of money, but it's not going to cost as much money as they have been paying many unscrupulous immigration solicitors on this issue. But I think that the most important thing to say is really that if you have problems like this, do not always believe what people in the community would say, that you can do this and do that, and then you go to the solicitor and they will help you. You just pay £10,000. Do not believe that, because it is by the sound of it, is really a scam. Try and go to community organizations. There's a lot of other organizations that are supporting migrants and refugee organizations. Try to go to the law center in your local areas, for example, because there are NGOs which will provide some kind of pro bono support, and you can get some free support, legal advice in Citizens Advice Bureau, for example, if you cannot contact us in your local area. So there's so many different ways you can do, but also, think properly and think first before you allow yourself to be scammed by many of the immigration solicitors and OISC accredited so-called advice organizations, who will just be there in order to get the money from you. And many of these kind of people have come to us also, and really tell them, look, you've been here for more than 15 years, another 5 years, wait another 5 years, and you'll be able to probably apply for the 20-year rule, or different kind of reasons. If they have families here, and they can try and argue family reasons for being able to regularize themselves as families. Those are the things that people can do, but do come to the right people, right organizations that can support them and will not take advantage of them.
And of course, as we both know, we've been getting a lot of messages recently, and I'm very happy for anybody to message me if they wish to tell me about the story, and I report any dodgy immigration solicitor. I have no hesitation of doing that, and then of course I will then direct them to yourself, and basically people can contact you directly if they wish, and the Kanlugan group if they wish as well. It breaks my heart to see people being ripped off. These are people who hardly have any money, and they're giving all of their money on a hope and a dream, and it's just completely fruitless. I just wanted to ask you one or two questions. I know we're running out of time, but I wanted you to take me through the average day of a overstay, or TNT, undocumented Filipino in the UK during the COVID-19 pandemic. How have they been managing, and what are the issues?
Well, during the pandemic, as we know, many of our undocumented have lost their jobs because they work in a very precarious situation of work, that they have no employment contract, that their employment is as and when at the whim of their employer sometimes. So when pandemic happened, many of them lost their jobs, because some of them are also living in their kind of work as domestic workers or nannies or carers. They also lost their accommodation. So in the process, they haven't got a job, they haven't got accommodation. So we have to find accommodation, temporary accommodation for them. There's a lot of generous Filipino families and members of the community who supported them and took them into their homes, despite the fact that everybody is worried, despite the fact that it's already overcrowding in their own houses. And then we provided the kind of food, groceries, basic needs that we can provide to the people, because they've lost their job, they haven't got the money to buy these things. There's also a lot of people who are elderly people in the community who have not been able to come out and buy their own kind of food because of shielding and health reasons. So we've supported those also. But many of those undocumented, now we have organized them into self-help groups, and now we're holding several kind of sessions with them in terms of their employment rights as undocumented. We're giving them a different kind of workshop in terms of how to keep their health and mental well-being in good shape, so that when the lockdown eases off, they can be in good health to be able to go out there emotionally and mentally and physically. So we're running that as we speak. There's almost every weekend we have sessions to support our undocumented on different kind of issues that they have to deal with, both physical, mental, around employment issues. We're gonna go after some employers because they haven't paid the workers their salary before they dismiss them, and and of course undocumented, they couldn't fight them because they thought they haven't got the right to fight for their earned wages. So we're gonna go after some employers and demand for the wages of these undocumented who have not been paid when they kick them out of their jobs. And also the fact that we're kind of mobilizing some of them who have already found a few work here and there to support others who are also looking for jobs. So it's almost really a self-help group where they each will support each other if there's some kind of issues that they can support the others. And we facilitate that through group workshops, through never-ending Zooms, as you know, that we have to hold now in these days. We could have done it face to face, but of course it doesn't allow us a condition. So we have to do all of these things in Zoom. But we're also giving them confidence to be able to say, there's nothing wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I came to the UK in order to support my family, in order to better our economic and social condition as a family, but also in order to support other people who needs the kind of expertise, work and care that we can offer to the people here. So it gives them the confidence to understand that they didn't do anything wrong because they are not doing anything that is illegal. They're working in order to support their families and to sustain their life and to better themselves too.
I think the vast majority of Filipinos who actually end up here, a lot of them have come from the Middle East. They left the Philippines to improve their livelihood, to improve their situation. Maybe they had a bad experience. They ended up coming here with their employer. They were almost forced to come here. For example, they might be looking after an elderly relative of somebody in the Middle East, and they've ended up here. It's not the case that people have been economic migrants. Nobody really flies from the Philippines to come here and becomes an overstayer. It doesn't work like that. And again, a lot of that is a racist attitude that what are all these migrants, what are all these overstayers? But no, every single one of these undocumented Filipinos has a genuine story, a genuine situation, or a very difficult background. Just one more question after this, but what would you say to anyone now who's watching this, who is undocumented, who's scared, who's been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I think that the most important thing that they have to think about is that first they have to make sure that they're healthy and they're mentally and emotionally and physically healthy. They have to look after themselves. Second, they really need to seek help in terms of understanding their visa and immigration condition without the kind of issue of just trying to get money from them. They really need to have an understanding, a clarity of how and whether they're able to regularize themselves. And that from there, they should be able to seek help. They should contact us, contact yourselves, Malcolm, of course, and contact us and other organizations to which they know have been supportive of them in terms of the different issues that they have. They should be able to find ways in which they can join the different kind of groups that we have set up in a kind of mutual help support for each other. We will be able to need help from them in terms of our campaign to regularize the situations of undocumented. It's not only us doing this, Malcolm. Many of our undocumented now are being confident enough to speak about their situations. As you know, we have quite a lot of media coverage who's been very sympathetic in terms of pushing the regularization of undocumented. There's just a few days ago, 2 or 3 media coverage on the BBC and the Guardian and the Independent has been pushing also for regularization through the kind of testimonies that many of our undocumented have done and given, and they're brave enough to talk about it. We've also launched this report about the lives of undocumented people with many very, very good life stories of our undocumented living in the UK now. So this is available online in our website. we're going to launch the campaign for Undocumented together with other organizations on the 11th of July. And I would like to invite you, Malcolm, and other people who are supportive of this effort to join that launch together with some MPs that are supporting our undocumented work. And I really would encourage undocumented people to come forward, talk to us, talk to yourselves, talk to the people who can support them without really being taken advantage of. I believe in the same way as when we were campaigning for the regularization of domestic workers many years ago, that we will win this campaign in one way or the other, in different forms. We will be able to regularize some of the people that might have the way and route through the legal system. But also, I believe that we will change the mindset of many racist and anti-migrant sentiments by many British people, because of what they have seen that many migrant workers have contributed to the society and are still doing and contributing. And as I said, the stories here where many undocumented carers are looking after very vulnerable people are not being said. You know, we're mostly talking about the NHS employees, but they're not thinking about these care workers or doing the care work that we're doing inside the homes and private homes of and many people, and some even care homes to a certain degree. So
We've
these
seen
are
some.
important things. They have to talk about their experience. They have to talk about their life, and they should be strong enough and confident enough to talk to the media, to the public, and say, I didn't do anything wrong. I did something really good. I provided for my family. I provided for the friends and relatives that I supported, and I looked after many people who are needing help in this country.
Thank you so much for that invite as well. It's such an honor. You know, it's a campaign or a situation that's been very close to my heart. In fact, I was able to support an undocumented Filipino a couple of months ago. She contacted me, and she basically met a guy online. He then got her pregnant. They then had a baby together, and eventually, then he asked her to leave, kicked her out the house. She was in hospital, and she was in a very difficult situation. So I was able to launch an online fundraiser, and with that, we're able to buy her some food and kind of help her, as she's now being put into temporary accommodation by the social services, and you know, I believe that she has hopefully going to have a better future. But as you were saying, she's not the only case. You know, I was really touched by support from around the world. There was a guy in America who helped out as well financially, and it just shows you, you know, but this is only one case. You know, it was only one person that I visited. We're able to buy some food for them, but there are hundreds of cases. And as you said, that's why you set up this group of parents with young children who are in a similar situation. And I just think that it's amazing that, as you said, Filipinos will support this. And of course, they should really donate to you if they're able to, because I know you do such fantastic work. So I'd like to thank you very much for everything you are doing, and for raising these very important issues and not being afraid to speak up. And, you know, you've been on television here in the UK, and I really admire what you're doing. And I'd just like to thank you for everything you are doing for Filipinos in the UK, but not only that, for Filipinos across the world, by raising these issues of undocumented Filipinos and the struggles that they have.
Well, I'd like to thank all the people who are working with me, volunteering with me, and all the people themselves who've been affected by these issues that are there. We're all working together. As I said to you, Malcolm, it's not just me. It's a whole load of many people working with me, and are supporting all the people who needed help. So many organizations, like I think I said to you, the Filipino Domestic Workers Association, Gabriela, the Filipino Chaplaincy, the Leicester organization, the Greenwich organizations, all the kind of organizations that have supported and delivered all these things that you can see, and supported many of the people who really needed help during the pandemic time. I really want to thank them, because without their kind of voluntary effort, without their kind of good-heartedness, and the kind of really selfless actions that they have done in order to support the people, we will never be able to set this up. And I think that I wanted to say also, across the world, many Filipino organizations like ourselves who work tirelessly, voluntarily, giving their time and effort for free to be able to support each other is really commendable. I know a lot of other organizations in Europe are doing exactly the same. Also, other organizations across the world are doing exactly the same. This is the Filipino kind of spirit, really, that we have this kind of tendency that we will support people after the last kind of ounce of rice that we have in our house. We will offer it to people in order to be able to support them, and that's really a really commendable kind of virtue and value of the Filipinos, not only in the UK but all over the world.
This is the Bayanihan spirit, right? We're all going to work together. We're all going to help each other, which I think is absolutely wonderful. And as I said earlier on another comment, Filipinos are always smiling. In times of adversity, in times of struggles, the Filipino people are very resilient and they really work through their issues. And I find that truly remarkable. Susan, I'd like to thank you very much. It's been one of the most engaging and important shows that I've done, and I know that there'll be people listening who will take a lot from this and take a lot of comfort from this. So I'd like to thank you so much. Maraming salamat for your support
Maraming
and for
salamat,
your group. It's great that I've had you on the show. I know you're a very, very busy lady. As you said, you always have all these Zoom meetings and you're always very busy. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time out. Do you have any closing words, greetings to all our listeners, shout outs?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to everybody, thank you. And hopefully we will still continue to support each other. Keep safe, keep yourself safe. And just support our campaign. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Well, guys, thank you so much. Maraming salamat. Mabuhay Pilipinas. We are going to have another 3 episodes. They're lined up, and I hope you'll join us for that. I'd like to again say thank you to Kabay and Remit for your sponsorship. Thank you for my team who are helping me with this project, and of course the tech support. Until next week, maraming salamat. Thank you.